The scorching sun beat down mercilessly on Zara Zimmerman's tear-stained face as she stood on the wooden auction platform, her wrists bound with coarse rope that bit into her skin. It was 1878 in Silver Creek, Nevada, and at 22 years old, Zara had just been sold by her husband of 3 years to the highest bidder, all because she couldn't give him the children he so desperately wanted. Sold. For $50 to the gentleman in the back, the auctioneer bellowed, his voice carrying across the dusty town square where a small crowd had gathered to witness her humiliation. Zara kept her eyes downcast, unable to look at the faces of the townsfolk who had once been her neighbors. They had watched in silence as her husband, Thomas Whitaker, had dragged her to the auction block that morning, announcing to anyone who would listen that she was defective goods and barren as the desert. 3 years of marriage, 3 years of trying, 3 years of monthly disappointment. 3 years that ended with her standing on this platform like livestock. She heard heavy footsteps approaching and braced herself. Her new owner would likely be no better than Thomas, probably some lonely miner or farmer looking for a woman to cook his meals and warm his bed. "Miss, if you'll come with me." The voice was deep but unexpectedly gentle. Zara finally raised her head and found herself looking into the most startling blue eyes she had ever seen. They belonged to a tall man with sun-bronzed skin and a strong jaw partially hidden beneath a neatly trimmed beard. He wore a dark Stetson that shadowed his features, but she could see kindness in those eyes that seemed out of place in this cruel moment. "Isaac Vaughn," he said, tipping his hat slightly. "My ranch is about a day's ride from here. I've got a horse for you." Isaac untied her bonds with careful hands that seemed too gentle for a man of his size. Zara remained silent, numb with shock and shame. What choice did she have but to follow him? The whispers followed them as Isaac led her through town toward the hitching post where 2 horses waited. Poor Whitaker, married to a barren woman. Vaughn's a fool to waste good money on damaged goods. Heard she's cursed. Isaac helped her onto a chestnut mare, his touch respectful and brief. "Don't listen to them," he said quietly, his voice barely carrying over the whispers. "People talk because they have nothing better to do." They rode in silence through the afternoon, leaving Silver Creek behind as they traveled northward. The landscape gradually changed from dusty plains to rocky foothills dotted with juniper and sage. Zara's thoughts churned like a river in flood season. What would this man expect of her? What new humiliations awaited her at his ranch as the sun began to set, painting the western sky in brilliant oranges and purples? Isaac finally broke the silence. "We'll be there soon, just over that ridge." Zara nodded, too exhausted and heartsick to speak. When they crested the ridge, she saw it a modest but well-maintained ranch nestled in a small valley. A 2-story house stood proudly at its center, surrounded by several outbuildings, corrals, and a barn. Cattle grazed in the distance, dark shapes against the fading light. "It's not much," Isaac said, a hint of pride in his voice, "but it's home." They rode into the yard, where a wizened old man with leathery skin emerged from the barn. "Hank," Isaac called, "this is Miss Zara. She'll be staying with us." Hank nodded, his weathered face revealing nothing as he took the reins of their horses. "Supper's almost ready. Made a stew." Isaac guided Zara toward the house with a light touch at her elbow. "You must be tired and hungry. We can talk after you've had some rest and food." The interior of the house was surprisingly comfortable, with solid furniture and clean, if worn, furnishings. A large stone fireplace dominated the main room, and the wooden floors had been swept clean. "This will be your room," Isaac said, opening a door off the main living area. "It was my mother's sewing room, but I think it will suit you fine. There's a lock on the door." He pointed to the simple brass fixture. The key is yours. Zara stared at him in confusion. My room with a lock. Isaac nodded. Yes, madam, your room, your key, your privacy. He hesitated, then added softly, I know what happened to you today, what that man did. But you should know I didn't buy you to be my wife or anything else you might be fearing. Then why? Zara found her voice at last, rough with emotion. Why would you spend good money on a woman who can't even do what women are supposed to do? Isaac's blue eyes held her steadily. Because what happened to you wasn't right. No person should be sold like cattle, and as for children. He shrugged his broad shoulders. I don't need heirs, Miss Zara. I just need someone to help around the ranch. Cooking, cleaning, maybe tending the garden my mother used to keep. In exchange, you'll have a roof over your head, food in your belly, and no one to bother you. Tears pricked at Zara's eyes, but she blinked them back. I don't understand. You don't have to understand today, Isaac said gently. Just know you're safe here, get some rest, we'll talk more tomorrow. After he left, closing the door behind him, Zara turned the key in the lock. The small click was the most beautiful sound she had heard in years, the sound of choice, of privacy, of safety. She sank onto the narrow bed and finally allowed her tears to fall. Morning came with golden light streaming through the small window of Zara's room. For a moment she was disoriented, expecting to see the familiar walls of the house she had shared with Thomas. Then the events of the previous day crashed over her like a wave, and she sat up abruptly. She was at the Vaughn ranch. She had been sold. She belonged to a stranger now. Except Isaac Vaughn didn't seem to think so. His words from the night before echoed in her mind. I don't need heirs, just someone to help around the ranch. Could it really be that simple? A soft knock at her door startled her. Miss Zara, Isaac's voice called. Breakfast is ready whenever you are. No rush. Zara quickly dressed in the same clothes she had worn yesterday, the only clothes she now possessed, and smoothed her dark hair as best she could before unlocking the door. The smell of coffee and bacon greeted her as she emerged. Isaac stood at the stove, his back to her, broad shoulders covered in a blue cotton shirt. Good morning, she said softly. He turned, a smile warming his features. Morning. Hope you slept well. Coffee, please, she answered, taking a seat at the wooden table. Isaac poured her a cup and set a plate of eggs, bacon, and biscuits before her. Hank's already out with the cattle. It's just us this morning. As they ate, Isaac outlined his proposition more clearly. I need help running this place. My mother passed 2 years ago and things have, well, fallen behind inside the house. I can pay you a fair wage, and when you've saved enough, if you want to leave and start fresh somewhere else, I won't stop you. Zara stared at him, searching for the catch. Why would you do this for a stranger? Isaac's eyes dropped to his coffee cup. My sister was in a bad marriage, her husband. He paused, jaw tightening. He was cruel. By the time I found out how bad things were, it was too late. She died in childbirth along with the baby. He looked up, meeting Zara's gaze. I couldn't help her, but maybe I can help you. I'm sorry about your sister, Zara said quietly. Isaac nodded. So we have a deal. You work here, earn your keep and a bit more besides, and you're free to stay or go as you choose. What about the money you paid for me? Consider it a loan. You can pay it back over time if it makes you feel better. Zara considered his offer. It was more than fair. It was a chance at freedom she hadn't dared to hope for. Yes, Mr. Vaughn, we have a deal. Isaac, he corrected with a small smile. Mr. Vaughn was my father. The days that followed settled into a rhythm that Zara found surprisingly comforting. She cleaned the house from top to bottom, discovering that, while Isaac was tidy enough for a bachelor rancher, there were years of dust in corners and cabinets that hadn't been touched since his mother's passing. Isaac was often out working with the cattle or making repairs around the ranch, but he always returned for lunch and dinner, which Zara prepared. Their conversations grew easier, less formal, as they shared meals and gradually revealed pieces of themselves. She learned that Isaac had been born on this ranch 30 years ago, that his father had died when he was 18, leaving him to run the place with his mother. That he'd gone to school in town until he was 16, that he could read and write better than most men in these parts, and that he had a fondness for dime novels about adventures in far-off places. In turn, she told him about growing up in Ohio, the daughter of a schoolteacher who had taught her to love books, how she'd come west with her parents at 17, only to lose them both to fever a year later, how Thomas had courted her when she was alone and vulnerable, promising security and family. "He seemed so kind at first," she confided one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "But when I didn't get with child right away, he changed. Started saying there was something wrong with me." Isaac's hand tightened on his coffee mug. "There's nothing wrong with you, Zara." She gave him a sad smile. "We tried for 3 years. Every month was the same disappointment. The doctor in Silver Creek said I might never be able to bear children." When Thomas heard that, it was like I became worthless to him overnight. "That's not how a man treats his wife," Isaac said, his voice low with controlled anger. "A marriage is supposed to be for better or worse." "I think Thomas only wanted the better part," Zara replied, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Spring turned to summer, and the ranch flourished under their combined efforts. Zara revived the vegetable garden, coaxing tomatoes, beans, and corn from the dry Nevada soil. She made curtains from fabric Isaac brought back from town, brightening the house that had felt so somber when she arrived. Isaac hired 2 young cowboys to help with the increasing herd, and Zara found herself cooking for a small crew. The ranch felt alive again, filled with voices and laughter at mealtimes. She caught Isaac watching her sometimes when he thought she wasn't looking. There was something in his gaze that made her heart beat faster, but he never overstepped the boundaries they had established. He was unfailingly respectful, kind without being condescending, and genuinely appreciative of her contributions to the ranch. One afternoon in late August, Zara was hanging laundry on the line when she heard horses approaching. Looking up, she saw 3 riders coming down the road toward the ranch, unusual, as they rarely had visitors this far out. Isaac emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on a cloth as he moved to meet the approaching men. Zara continued her task, but kept an eye on the exchange. The conversation seemed tense. Isaac's posture had stiffened, and even from a distance, she could see the hard set of his jaw. After several minutes, the men turned their horses and rode away, and Isaac stalked toward the house. "Is everything all right?" Zara asked as he reached her. "That was Sheriff Mills from Silver Creek," Isaac said, his voice tight. "Seems Thomas Whitaker is making noise about me stealing his property. Says he was drunk when he sold you and wants you back or compensation." Zara's blood ran cold. "He can't do that, can he?" Isaac's eyes softened as he looked at her frightened face. "No, you're not property no matter what that paper from the auction says, but Mills suggested it might be simpler if I were to pay Whitaker off to avoid trouble." "And will you?" Zara asked, her voice small. "No." Isaac's response was immediate and firm. "I won't give that man a single cent. If he wants trouble, he'll find it." His expression gentled. "Don't worry, I won't let him take you back." That night, Zara couldn't sleep. The thought of Thomas reclaiming her made her physically ill. She had found peace here with Isaac, had begun to heal from the wounds of her marriage. The idea of returning to Silver Creek, to Thomas's hands, was unbearable. She rose before dawn and slipped out to the porch, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders against the pre-dawn chill. The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten, stars fading as the world prepared for a new day. The door opened behind her and Isaac stepped out, 2 steaming cups in his hands. "Thought you might be out here," he said, offering her one of the cups. "Couldn't sleep either." "Thank you," she said, taking the coffee gratefully. "I'm sorry about the trouble with Thomas." Isaac leaned against the porch railing beside her. "It's not your trouble, Zara. It's ours now." The quiet certainty in his voice warmed her more than the coffee. "I've been thinking," she said carefully. "Maybe I should leave, go somewhere Thomas can't find me." "Is that what you want?" Isaac asked, studying her profile in the growing light. "No," Zara admitted, "but I don't want to bring trouble to your door either. I'm not afraid of trouble." Isaac set his cup down on the railing. "Zara, look at me." She turned to face him, struck again by the intensity of his blue eyes. "In these past months, you've brought life back to this ranch, back to me," he said quietly. "I don't want you to go. But I want you to stay because you choose to, not because you feel obligated or afraid." Zara's heart pounded against her ribs. "And if I choose to stay, what then?" Isaac took a deep breath. "Then I'd ask if you might consider a different arrangement between us." "Not right away," he added hastily. "But someday, when you're ready." "What kind of arrangement?" Zara asked, though she thought she knew the answer, hoped she knew. "A proper marriage," Isaac said, his voice husky. "Not like what you had with Whitaker, a partnership, equal in all ways." "But what about children?" Zara whispered. "You know I might never, I told you the day we met," Isaac interrupted gently. "I don't need heirs, Zara. I just need you." The sincerity in his voice brought tears to her eyes. No man had ever looked at her the way Isaac was looking at her now, like she was precious, complete, enough just as she was. "I'd like to stay," she said softly. "And someday I might consider that arrangement." Isaac's smile was like the sunrise breaking over the mountains, gradual, then brilliant all at once. "Then we'll face Whitaker together." They didn't have to wait long. 2 days later, Thomas Whitaker himself rode into the yard, flanked by 2 rough-looking men Zara didn't recognize. She was in the kitchen when she heard the horses, and her heart nearly stopped when she peered out the window and saw her former husband dismounting. Isaac was already striding across the yard to meet them, his hand resting casually near the revolver holstered at his hip. Zara couldn't hear their words, but she could see Thomas gesturing angrily, jabbing a finger in Isaac's chest. She couldn't stay hidden. Drawing a deep breath, Zara stepped out onto the porch. Thomas spotted her immediately. "There she is. Zara, get your things. You're coming home where you belong." "She is home," Isaac said, his voice carrying clearly in the still air. Thomas sneered. "This ain't legal and you know it, Vaughn. I was drunk when that auction happened. She's still my wife under the law." "Actually," Isaac replied calmly, "she's not. I checked with Judge Parker in Carson City." The auction was witnessed by the sheriff and 20 townsfolk. "You signed the bill of sale. It's binding." "She's mine," Thomas snarled. Zara found her voice. "No, Thomas, I'm not yours. I never really was." Thomas's face contorted with rage. He lunged forward, reaching for her, but Isaac stepped smoothly between them. "You need to leave," Isaac said, his voice level but laced with steel. "Now." "Or what?" Thomas challenged, his hand dropping to his own gun. The yard went silent. The 2 men with Thomas spread out slightly, hands hovering near their weapons. "You're outnumbered, Vaughn," Thomas said with a nasty smile. "Is he?" Hank's weathered voice called from the barn doorway, where he stood with a shotgun cradled in his arms. The 2 young cowboys emerged from behind the house, rifles ready. Thomas glanced around, realizing his disadvantage. "This ain't over," he spat. "Yes, it is," Isaac said firmly. "You sold her, I bought her. But unlike you, I set her free. Zara stays or goes as she chooses. And she's choosing to stay." Thomas's gaze shifted to Zara, hatred burning in his eyes. "No man will want you once they know what you are," he hissed. "Barren, useless." "Yet here I am," Isaac said quietly, "wanting her more than I've ever wanted anything." The simple declaration hung in the air between them. Zara felt something bloom in her chest, hope, fragile but growing stronger by the moment. Thomas glared at them both, then turned and stomped back to his horse. "You deserve each other," he snarled as he mounted up. "A barren woman and a fool who doesn't care about his family line. Pathetic." They watched in silence as Thomas and his men rode away, dust clouds marking their passage long after they disappeared from view. "Did you mean it?" Zara asked when they were alone again, the cowboys and Hank having returned to their work. "What you said about wanting me," Isaac turned to her, vulnerability plain in his eyes. "Every word. But I meant what I said before too, only when you're ready, if you're ever ready." Zara took a step toward him, then another, until she stood directly before him. Slowly, giving him time to step away if he wished, she raised her hand to his cheek. His beard was soft beneath her fingers, his skin warm from the sun. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me as a person worth fighting for." Isaac's hand came up to cover hers. "Always," he promised. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, a habit they had fallen into over the months, Zara felt a new ease between them. The confrontation with Thomas had changed something, clarified feelings that had been growing since the day Isaac had brought her to the ranch. "Tell me about your dreams," Isaac said, as the sky painted itself in brilliant oranges and pinks. "Before everything with Thomas." "What did you want from life?" Zara considered the question. "I wanted a home," she said finally. "Not just a house, but a real home, with someone who truly cared for me. I wanted to be useful, to create something lasting." She paused. "I wanted children, yes. But I think what I really wanted was family, people who would love me unconditionally." "And now?" Isaac asked softly. "Now I know there are different ways to make a family," Zara replied, watching the last sliver of sun disappear behind the mountains. "Different ways to leave something lasting in the world." Isaac nodded, his eyes reflecting the fading light. "My father used to say that a legacy isn't just about blood. It's about what you build, what you teach, how you change the world around you for the better." "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was." Isaac smiled at the memory. "He would have liked you." They sat in companionable silence as darkness settled over the land and stars began to appear overhead. Crickets chirped in the tall grass, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to its pack. "There's a social in town next Saturday," Isaac said eventually. "Dance, pie auction, that sort of thing. Would you like to go, with me?" Zara turned to look at him, this man who had saved her in more ways than one. "As your housekeeper?" she asked, though she knew that wasn't what he meant. Isaac's gaze was steady. "As my friend, as the woman I'm courting, if you'll allow it." Zara's heart fluttered in her chest. "Yes," she said simply. "I'd like that very much." The week leading up to the social passed in a blur of anticipation and preparation. Zara spent hours altering one of Isaac's mother's old dresses, a lovely blue calico that complemented her dark hair and brought out the green in her hazel eyes. Isaac seemed just as nervous, making an extra trip to town for a haircut and a new shirt. Hank teased him mercilessly, but there was fondness in the old cowboy's eyes as he watched the pair of them dance around each other with newfound awareness. When Saturday arrived, Zara found herself humming as she pinned up her hair, securing it with a mother-of-pearl comb that Isaac had shyly presented to her that morning. "It was my mother's," he'd explained. "I thought it might look nice with your dress." They drove the wagon into town together, the late summer air warm and fragrant with sage. Pahrump was a small settlement compared to Silver Creek, but it was growing steadily as the mines in the area attracted new settlers. The town hall was festooned with lanterns and bunting, and the sounds of a fiddle and piano spilled out into the evening. "Nervous?" Isaac asked as he helped Zara down from the wagon. "A little," she admitted. "I haven't been to a social since. Well, since before." Isaac offered his arm. "We don't have to stay long if you're uncomfortable." But as they entered the hall, Zara found herself relaxing. The people of Pahrump knew Isaac well and welcomed her warmly. No one asked awkward questions about her past or made comments about her childless state. Here, she was simply Miss Zara, Isaac Vaughn's friend from back east. They danced together, Isaac's large hands gentle as he guided her through reels and waltzes. He wasn't the most graceful dancer, but his earnest efforts and the way he looked at her like she was the only woman in the room made Zara feel beautiful in a way she never had before. During a break in the dancing, as they sipped punch by the open doors to catch the breeze, the mayor's wife approached them. "Mr. Vaughn, Miss Zimmerman, I'm so glad you could join us tonight," Mrs. Perkins said with a warm smile. "I've been meaning to ask, Miss Zimmerman, if you might be interested in helping with our little school. We're in desperate need of someone with proper education to teach the younger children. Isaac mentioned you were the daughter of a schoolteacher and quite accomplished yourself." Zara glanced at Isaac in surprise. He gave her an encouraging nod. "I'd be delighted to help," Zara replied, warmth spreading through her at the thought of teaching again. "I taught briefly back in Ohio before coming west." "Wonderful," Mrs. Perkins beamed. "Perhaps you could come by on Tuesday to discuss the details. The children would start after the harvest is in." After Mrs. Perkins moved on to greet other guests, Zara turned to Isaac. "You told her about my teaching." Isaac looked slightly sheepish. "I might have mentioned it when I was in town last. I've seen how you light up when you talk about books and learning. Thought you might enjoy the opportunity." "Thank you," Zara said, touched by his thoughtfulness. "It would be nice to teach again." The evening continued with the pie auction, where Isaac bid an outrageous sum for Zara's apple pie, much to the amusement of the townsfolk. As they drove home under the starlit sky, Zara felt a contentment she hadn't experienced in years. "I had a wonderful time," she said, nestled beside Isaac on the wagon seat. "So did I," he replied, his voice warm in the darkness. "I like seeing you happy, Zara." She rested her head briefly against his shoulder. "I am happy. Happier than I thought I could be again." That night, as she prepared for bed, Zara realized something important. She no longer locked her bedroom door. Somewhere along the way, she had stopped being afraid. She trusted Isaac completely, knew in her heart that he would never hurt her. The next morning she found him at the kitchen table, account books spread before him, a slight frown creasing his brow. "Problems?" she asked, moving to the stove to start coffee. "Just planning," Isaac replied, closing the ledger. "Winter will be here before we know it. Need to make sure we're prepared." Zara set a cup of coffee before him and took the seat opposite. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Isaac took a sip, his blue eyes watching her over the rim of the cup. "You already do more than enough around here. I enjoy it," she said honestly. "This place, it feels like home now." A smile transformed his features. "I'm glad." He hesitated, then added, "I've been thinking about building an addition to the house. Another bedroom on the main floor, maybe a bigger kitchen." "Oh," Zara raised an eyebrow. "Are you planning to hire more hands?" "No," Isaac set down his cup. "I'm planning, hoping that someday we might need more space for us." The implication was clear. Zara felt her cheeks warm, but she didn't look away from his earnest gaze. "That would be nice," she said softly. "Someday." As autumn painted the landscape in golds and reds, Zara divided her time between the ranch and the schoolhouse in town. 3 days a week, She taught a dozen children ranging from 5 to 10 years old their letters, numbers, and history. The work was fulfilling, allowing her to use the education her father had insisted upon even when others had questioned the value of teaching a girl beyond the basics. Isaac built shelves for her classroom, brought in wood for the stove on cold mornings, and occasionally stayed to listen as she read stories to the children at the end of the day. She would often look up to find him watching her with a soft expression that made her heart skip. Their courtship progressed slowly, respectfully. Isaac never pressed for more than Zara was ready to give, but each day brought them closer. Shared meals, quiet evenings by the fire, Sunday rides to explore the countryside around the ranch, simple pleasures that wove themselves into the fabric of their life together. In late October, they took a picnic up to a ridge overlooking the valley. The aspens were brilliant gold against the evergreens, and the air held the crisp promise of winter to come. As they sat on a blanket sharing bread, cheese, and early apples from the tree behind the house, Isaac grew unusually quiet. "Is everything all right?" Zara asked, noticing the way he kept reaching into his pocket. Isaac took a deep breath. "Zara, I've been trying to find the right words for days, but I'm not much for fancy speeches, so I'll just say it plain." He shifted to face her directly. "These past months with you have been the happiest of my life. I promised I wouldn't rush you, and I mean to keep that promise, but I want you to know that my feelings are certain." From his pocket, he withdrew a small ring, a simple gold band set with a single pearl. "This was my grandmother's. I'd be honored if you'd wear it someday when you're ready to be my wife." Zara looked at the ring, then at this man who had shown her what love truly looked like: patient, kind, respectful, who had never once made her feel less because she might not be able to give him children, who saw her for herself. "Ask me," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Isaac's eyes widened slightly, then crinkled at the corners as he smiled. "Zara Zimmerman, will you marry me? Not because I bought you, not because you owe me, but because we choose each other freely and completely." Tears spilled down Zara's cheeks as she nodded. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you, Isaac Vaughn." With gentle fingers, he slipped the ring onto her hand, then raised her fingers to his lips, pressing a kiss against her knuckles. "May I?" he asked, leaning toward her. Zara met him halfway, their lips touching in a tender first kiss that promised many more to come. They were married on the first day of December, in the small church in Pahrump, with Hank, the young cowboys, and the townsfolk as witnesses. Zara wore a new dress of deep blue wool with lace at the collar and cuffs, a gift from Isaac. He stood tall and proud beside her in a black suit, his usual Stetson replaced by neatly combed hair and a nervous smile. "Do you, Isaac James Vaughn, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" the preacher asked. "I do," Isaac replied, his voice steady and sure. "And do you, Zara Elizabeth Zimmerman, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do," Zara answered, her heart full to overflowing. "Then, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Isaac's kiss was gentle but held a promise of passion to come. As they turned to face their friends and neighbors, Zara felt a profound sense of rightness. This was her home, her family, her life chosen freely, built on respect and love. The winter passed in a sweet haze of newlywed contentment. They settled into the rhythms of married life with an ease that surprised them both. Isaac proved to be a considerate and passionate husband, always attentive to Zara's comfort and pleasure. For her part, Zara discovered a deep joy in their physical intimacy, so different from her first marriage, where such things had always been tinged with pressure and disappointment. "I never knew it could be like this," she confessed one night, curled against his side in their bed, the fire casting a warm glow across the room. Isaac pressed a kiss to her forehead. Like what? So mutual, so giving. She traced patterns on his chest with her fingertips. Thomas only ever thought about himself, about getting an heir. Isaac captured her hand, bringing it to his lips. Then he was a fool twice over. He missed the joy of simply loving you for yourself. Spring arrived with an explosion of wildflowers across the ranch's pastures. Zara's school continued to grow as more families settled in the area, and Isaac's cattle business flourished under his careful management. They discussed the possibility of hiring another teacher to help with the older children, perhaps expanding the schoolhouse. On a warm May morning, almost a year after Isaac had brought her to the ranch, Zara awoke feeling strangely unwell. She barely made it outside before emptying her stomach behind the house. "Zara," Isaac's concerned voice called as he found her leaning against the wall. "Are you all right?" "Just a little ill," she assured him, straightening up. "Probably something I ate." But when the same thing happened the next morning, and the next, a wild, impossible hope began to form in her mind. "I think," she said carefully over breakfast a week later, watching Isaac's face, "I might need to see the doctor in town." Alarm immediately flooded his features. "Are you sick? Why didn't you say something sooner? Not sick. At least, I don't think so." Zara took a deep breath. "Isaac, I think I might be, with child." Isaac went perfectly still, his coffee cup halfway to his lips. "With child," he repeated, his voice barely audible. "But the doctor in Silver Creek said." "Doctors can be wrong," Zara said, her own voice trembling with a mixture of fear and hope. "It's been almost a month since my courses were due." The cup clattered back to its saucer as Isaac rose and came around the table, kneeling before her chair. "Zara," he said, taking her hands in his eyes searching her face. "Are you certain?" "No," she admitted, "but I feel different. And I've never been this regular before." She squeezed his hands. "I don't want to hope too much." "We'll go to town today," Isaac decided. "See Dr. Matthews." The ride to town was tense with anticipation. Zara tried to temper her hopes there could be many explanations for her symptoms. She had believed herself barren for so long that the possibility of a child seemed like a dream too fragile to trust. Dr. Matthews was a kindly older man who had settled in Pahrump after years of practice back east. He examined Zara thoroughly, asking questions about her symptoms and history. "Well, Mrs. Vaughn," he said finally, a smile crinkling his eyes, "I believe congratulations are in order. You're about 6 weeks along by my estimation." Zara's hand flew to her mouth as tears filled her eyes. "You're certain?" "As certain as medicine allows," the doctor replied. "All signs point to a healthy pregnancy. I'd expect the baby sometime in early December." Isaac, who had been waiting anxiously outside the examination room, leapt to his feet when Zara emerged. One look at her tear-streaked, smiling face told him everything. "A baby." He whispered, as if saying it too loudly might break the spell. Zara nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. With a whoop of joy that startled everyone in the doctor's waiting room, Isaac swept her into his arms, lifting her feet clear off the floor. "A baby!" he exclaimed, his face alight with wonder and happiness. On the ride home, they could barely stop talking, making plans and expressing their amazement. "I never thought," Zara kept saying. "After all those years with Thomas, I truly believed." "Maybe you just needed the right man," Isaac teased, his eyes dancing with joy. Then more seriously, "Zara, you know I would have been content with just you. This baby is a miracle, a blessing I never expected, but you were always enough." "I know," she said, resting her head on his shoulder. "That's why I love you." Word of their impending parenthood spread quickly through the small community. Gifts began appearing at the ranch, a hand-carved cradle from the blacksmith, tiny knitted clothes from the ladies' sewing circle, a beautiful quilt from Mrs. Perkins. As summer progressed, Zara's body changed, her midsection gradually swelling with the new life growing within. Isaac was endearingly attentive, insisting she rest more, bringing her wild strawberries from the hills, reading to her in the evenings as she sewed baby clothes. "What shall we name the baby?" he asked one night as they sat on the porch swing, his hand resting protectively on her growing belly. "If it's a boy, I thought perhaps James, after your father," Zara suggested, watching his face for his reaction. Isaac's eyes softened. "I'd like that." "And if it's a girl, Elizabeth after my mother. Or perhaps Margaret after yours." "Margaret Elizabeth Vaughn," Isaac said, testing the name. "It has a nice sound." As autumn approached, they completed the addition to the house, a nursery adjacent to their bedroom, painted a cheerful yellow with white curtains at the window. Isaac built a rocking chair that he placed near the cradle, and Zara often found him standing in the doorway, looking at the little room with a mixture of awe and trepidation. "What if I'm not a good father?" he confessed one evening. "My own father died when I was young. What if I don't know how to do this?" Zara took his hand, placing it on her rounded belly where the baby was kicking vigorously. "Feel that? That's our child, already strong and determined. You'll be a wonderful father because you know how to love, Isaac. That's the most important thing." The first snow of winter dusted the ranch on the morning of December 3rd, 1879. The same day, Zara felt the first pains that signaled their child's impending arrival. Isaac sent one of the cowboys racing to town for the doctor and the midwife, while Hank boiled water and gathered clean linens. "Don't worry," Zara told Isaac, trying to mask her own fear with bravado. "Women have been doing this since the beginning of time." But as the hours passed and the pains intensified, both their fears grew. The doctor arrived just as the sun was setting, bringing welcome expertise to the anxious household. "Everything is progressing normally," he assured them after examining Zara. "First babies often take their time." Through the long night, Isaac never left Zara's side, wiping her brow, supporting her through the pains, whispering words of encouragement and love. As dawn broke, painting the snow-covered landscape in rose and gold, their son was born, a robust, healthy boy with a shock of dark hair and his father's blue eyes. "James Thomas Vaughn," Zara whispered as she held their son for the first time. Isaac looked surprised at the middle name. "Thomas." "For new beginnings," Zara explained, her eyes never leaving their child's face. "For the path that led us here, difficult as it was, without Thomas I might never have found you." Isaac leaned down to press a kiss to her forehead, then to his son's. "James Thomas Vaughn," he agreed. "Welcome to the world, son." As winter settled over the ranch, the Vaughn family found a new rhythm centered around the tiny, miraculous life they had created. James, already called Jamie by everyone who met him, thrived under his parents' loving care. His birth was followed by a steady stream of visitors bearing gifts and good wishes, each one marveling at the baby's strong lungs and healthy appetite. "He's going to be tall like his pa," Hank declared, his weathered face softening as Jamie wrapped a tiny hand around his gnarled finger. Isaac could hardly bear to be away from his son and wife, arranging his work so he could return to the house frequently throughout the day. Zara often found him simply watching Jamie sleep, an expression of wonder on his face. "What are you thinking?" she asked one evening, coming to stand beside him at the cradle. "I'm thinking that I'm the luckiest man in Nevada," Isaac replied, wrapping an arm around her waist. "That this life we've built, you, me, Jamie, it's more than I ever dreamed possible." Zara rested her head against his shoulder. "It's funny, isn't it? A year and a half ago I thought my life was over. I was standing on that auction block, believing I had no value because I couldn't have children." She looked down at their sleeping son. "Now I know that wasn't true. I would have been enough for you, just as I am. But this," she gently touched Jamie's soft cheek, "this is a blessing I never thought I'd know." "The greatest blessing," Isaac agreed, "is finding someone to share it all with, the good and the bad, the everyday moments and the miracles." As spring returned to the valley, bringing new calves to the herd and fresh green to the pastures, Zara stood on the porch with 4-month-old Jamie in her arms, watching Isaac work with the horses in the corral. The sun caught in his hair, turning it to gold, and when he looked up and waved to them, his smile was brighter than the sun itself. "That's your pa," she told Jamie, who gurgled and waved his arms excitedly. "He's the best man I know. He taught me what love really means, that it's not about what you can give or do, but about who you are." Jamie cooed as if he understood every word, his blue eyes so like his father's focusing on her face. "And you, my unexpected miracle," Zara continued, pressing a kiss to his forehead. "You are the proof that sometimes life gives us exactly what we need, even when we've stopped believing it's possible." Isaac finished his work and walked toward them, his stride purposeful and sure. As he climbed the porch steps to join his family, Zara felt a deep contentment settle in her soul. This was her home, her family, her love story written in a language of second chances and unexpected blessings. "What are you two talking about?" Isaac asked, brushing a kiss against her lips before taking Jamie into his arms. "About how lucky we are," Zara replied simply. Isaac looked from his wife to his son, then out at the ranch that was flourishing under their care. "Luck had nothing to do with it," he said softly. "This is what happens when you choose love, every single day." As the years passed, the Vaughn ranch prospered, growing in size and reputation. Isaac's careful management and forward-thinking approaches to ranching made them one of the most successful operations in the region. Zara's school expanded into a proper academy, drawing students from as far away as Carson City for its quality education. To everyone's surprise, including her own, Zara gave birth to 3 more children over the next 6 years. Twin girls, Margaret and Elizabeth, followed by another son they named Hank, after the old ranch hand who had become like family and had passed peacefully in his sleep the winter before the boy was born. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Isaac surprised Zara with a trip to San Francisco, a week away from the ranch and children, just the two of them. As they stood on the deck of a ferry crossing the bay, watching the sunset paint the water in brilliant hues, Isaac wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Any regrets?" he asked, his voice warm against her ear. Zara turned in his embrace to face him. At 32, Isaac was more handsome than ever, his face weathered by years of work in the sun, a few silver strands beginning to appear at his temples. The laugh lines around his eyes had deepened, testament to the joy that had filled their life together. "Not a single one," she replied honestly. "Every step of the journey brought us here, even the painful ones." Isaac's hand came up to cup her cheek. "Remember what I said to you that day in Silver Creek, when Thomas was trying to take you back?" Zara nodded, her eyes never leaving his. "You said you wanted me more than you'd ever wanted anything." "Still true," Isaac said simply, "even more so now." Later that night, in the privacy of their hotel room, Zara showed him just how mutual that feeling was, their bodies finding the familiar rhythms of a love that had only deepened with time and experience. In the afterglow, as they lay tangled together in the soft sheets, Zara propped herself up on one elbow to study her husband's face. "Do you ever think about that day, when you saw me on the auction block?" Isaac nodded, his expression solemn. "Often." I remember how angry I was that someone could treat another human being that way, that a man could discard his wife as if she were nothing more than property. "Why did you do it?" Zara asked. "Bid on me, I mean. You didn't know me." Isaac was quiet for a moment, his fingers trailing absently along her bare shoulder. "I told you about my sister," he said finally. "How her husband was cruel, how she died. What I didn't tell you was that I arrived at their home the day after she died. Her husband was already making arrangements to sell off her possessions, her wedding ring, the quilt our mother made for her, even the dress she was to be buried in." Zara gasped softly. "Isaac, that's terrible." "I beat him within an inch of his life," Isaac admitted, his voice low. "Not proud of it, but I did. Then I took my sister's things and gave her a proper burial. When I saw you on that platform, saw the way your husband was treating you." He shook his head. "I couldn't walk away, couldn't let it happen again." "So you bought me," Zara said, understanding flooding through her. "To save me like you couldn't save your sister." "At first, yes," Isaac acknowledged. "But then I got to know you, your strength, your kindness, your resilience. Falling in love with you was the easiest thing I've ever done." Zara leaned down to kiss him, pouring all her love and gratitude into the gesture. "Thank you," she whispered against his lips, "for seeing value in me when I couldn't see it in myself." When they returned home to the ranch, to their children's excited embraces and the comfortable routines of their life together, Zara felt the same surge of gratitude and contentment she had experienced so many times over the past decade. From the darkest moment of her life had come this abundance of joy and love. On a warm summer evening 20 years after they first met, Zara and Isaac sat on the porch of their ranch house, watching their grandchildren play in the yard. Jamie, now a grown man of 19 with his father's build and his mother's quiet intelligence, was showing his young nephew how to throw a lasso. The twins, beautiful young women of 16, were helping their younger brother Hank set up a picnic under the old oak tree. "Did you ever imagine this?" Zara asked, her hand finding Isaac's as it had countless times over the years. Isaac's fingers interlaced with hers, the familiar calluses and strength still sending a flutter through her heart after all this time. "Not in my wildest dreams," he admitted. "When I was a young man, I thought I'd be content with my cattle and my land. I never imagined all this." He gestured toward their family, their home, the life they had built together. Zara leaned her head against his shoulder, silver now threading through her dark hair, laugh lines framing her still bright eyes. "I'm glad you didn't need heirs," she teased gently. "Just me." Isaac pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Best decision I ever made," he said. "Turns out I got everything I never knew I wanted: you, our children, this life we've shared." His voice grew husky with emotion. "You're the heart of it all, Zara, always have been." As the sun set over their ranch, painting the sky in the same brilliant colors they had watched together for 2 decades, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought them here from an auction block in Silver Creek to this moment of perfect contentment. "I love you, Isaac Vaughn," she said simply, "today and always." "And I love you, Zara Vaughn," he replied, the words as true and sure as they had been on the day he first spoke them, "more than anything in this world." Their grandchildren's laughter rang out across the yard, a joyful sound that echoed the happiness that filled their hearts. From darkness had come light, from despair had come hope, from a moment of deepest humiliation had come a lifetime of love and respect. And as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Isaac and Zara Vaughn held hands on their porch, grateful for the twist of fate that had brought them together, for the love they had chosen, day after day, year after year, and for the legacy they had created together, not just of blood, but of love, of kindness, of a life well lived.